Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a rather late edition of Scotland at 7. I'm Gordon Ross. The reason that we're running a little bit late tonight is partly because Scotland at 7 and Broadcasting Scotland itself have found ourselves at the centre of the news this evening, especially because of something which happened in Prime Minister's questions this afternoon. A couple of weeks ago, Broadcasting Scotland did its usual Sunday show, which is normally known as the full Scottish, from Aberdeen, and during that outside broadcast we also broadcast a bit of I suppose you'd call it a bit of conversation from Keith Brown, in which he was talking about the so-called Section 30 order, and that has managed to find its way through the Conservative Party's PR department into an unauthorised video, an unauthorised use of Broadcasting Scotland's material, and has now found itself at the centre of a major breaking story at PMQs. So what has happened is that Keith Brown has been describing what the Section 30 order meant, and during his description he happened to say that he felt that the fact that we shouldn't, the Yes movement, the broader Yes movement, the SNP, should not anticipate or use the anticipation of not having a Section 30, in other words, having it denied by the Conservative Party, as a reason for not holding a referendum or not planning for one. So this general statement has led to the unfolding drama today at PMQs, and I'm hoping we'll have a little bit of video for you, which will explain this a little bit.
One of the things that's very important is what happens on a Section 30 order. So now, I have said, and I think Johnny may have been at the agreement when I've said it, I don't think that certainly the SNP and I don't think the Yes movement should be willing to anticipate a refusal of a Section 30 order as a reason not to call a referendum. If we want to have a referendum, then we decide we're going to have a referendum.
So as you can see and hear from Keith Brown's delivery there, the comment he was making was not so much one which was saying that the SNP was actually planning to hold a referendum, illegal or otherwise, but was simply saying to the SNP and the Yes supporters generally that they shouldn't take the denial or even the anticipation that the Tories might deny the Section 30 order as a reason for not planning ahead. And now this particular comment that Keith made 2 weeks ago has been taken out of context and has been regurgitated by the Conservative Party in what can only be described as a fabricated scenario where they claim that the SNP, or in fact Keith Brown, is planning some kind of secret illegal referendum. Now there may well be some more video footage coming up of PMQs just shortly. I'm hoping we'll have that.
Worse still, today we read in the papers that the First Minister's deputy is also plotting another referendum on independence, no matter whether it's legal or not. Another independence referendum is the last thing Scotland needs. So irrespective of the views of her errant deputy, will the First Minister rule out this divisive plan?
First Minister.
The legal basis for the next independence referendum should be the same as the basis for the last independence referendum. And the only reason we are talking about this issue is the disgracefully anti-democratic stance of the Conservatives, who refuse to recognise a mandate won at not just one election but 2 elections and endorsed by this Parliament. But, Presiding Officer, we can always tell when the Tories are in trouble because pantomime Jackson Carlaw makes a reappearance. The face gets red, the arms get waved about. The fact of the matter is, people in Scotland will have ample opportunity to talk about the many benefits of becoming an independent country, but we don't have too much longer to sort out the mess of Brexit. So I'm going to give him yet another opportunity. 22 days, 3 weeks tomorrow at midnight, Scotland is due to be taken out of the EU, and we still don't know what follows from that. That could be taking away that uncertainty if a no-deal Brexit is ruled out. So for once in his life, will Jackson Carlaw stand up to his bosses at Westminster, and will he join with me in demanding that the Prime Minister rules out a no-deal Brexit and that she does it now with no further delay?
Jackson Carlaw.
The whole chamber knows that in 2 short years Ruth Davidson will be sitting where the First Minister sits today. And a Scottish Conservative First Minister will be answering questions for a long time to come. But for the moment, this First Minister remains in office. So in summary, the SNP is preparing to launch a new currency, according to their Deputy Leader, which would throw people's mortgages and Scotland's economy into chaos. Then, according to her Deputy Leader, with whom she's now disagreeing publicly, the SNP plan to launch an illegal referendum within a matter of weeks. Another week of the SNP showing that there is only one priority for this government, and that's satisfying Nicola Sturgeon's obsession with a second independence referendum. Enough is enough. First Minister,
Order.
Just rule it out and let Scotland move on.
First Minister.
Well, at the start of that latest chapter in the pantomime, Jackson Carlaw actually had the good grace to laugh at himself. He was being so utterly ridiculous. I was going to say Jackson Carlaw has lost the plot. I'm not sure he ever had the plot in the first place. But let me tell Jackson Carlaw what my obsession is right now. It's saving Scotland from the disaster of a Tory Brexit. Now, I don't know how Jackson Carlaw plans to spend the rest of his day. Let me tell him how I'll be spending the rest of my day. This afternoon, I will be chairing a meeting. Jackson Carlaw might want to listen to this. I will be chairing a meeting of the Scottish Government's Resilience Committee. And what we will be looking at is how just 3 weeks from now, 3 weeks tomorrow, we can secure medicine supply in Scotland, how we can secure food supply, make sure people in Scotland still have food on their table. We will be looking at how we can protect our economy from the risk of being plunged into recession. All of that time, all of that effort, all of that expense, because a Tory Prime Minister refuses to rule out a no-deal Brexit. It is shameful that the Scottish Conservatives have not demanded that she do so. You know, I've been wondering why the Scottish Tories are
First Minister,
as supine as they are. Perhaps it's because, Presiding Officer, they don't want to stand up for Scotland and never will stand up for Scotland.
Strong words there from the First Minister. Now, having watched your way through that, you'll probably have noticed that we haven't yet got to the meat and potatoes, as it were, of this business of the so-called illegal referendum that Carlaw is alleging. But we should come to that shortly. It's been said today by the SNP that the Tories are treating Scotland's democracy with contempt, and any attempt to deny a referendum to the people of Scotland is undemocratic. And in fact, even Ruth Davidson in 2016 is quoted as having said here that constitutionally the UK government should not block it. The Tories have a right to oppose independence, according to MSP Bruce Crawford, but they do not have a right to deny the people of Scotland the chance to determine their own future. This coming from SNP MSP Bruce Crawford. Jeremy Hunt's comments today were profoundly anti-democratic and show that the Tories are now openly treating Scottish democracy with contempt, particularly given that every area of Scotland voted to remain. Even Ruth Davidson argued after Brexit that the UK government should not block a referendum. And yet today we're hearing from Jackson Carlaw that that's precisely what they want to do, even going to the enormous lengths of producing an unauthorised version of Broadcasting Scotland's video, including some kind of trumped-up, what would you call it, a petition of some kind demanding that there be no second Scottish referendum. Now, nobody in Scotland is in a position to deny using petitions or anything else the people of Scotland a second referendum. That has been hard won by 2 mandates from the SNP, both secured in Holyrood by fully democratic means and backed up by a vote in Holyrood itself. So there is a triple locked mandate for an independence referendum at a time when the Scottish Government deems it is appropriate. At the moment, there is no plan, and there's been no announcement of an independence referendum. And Jackson Carlaw's inference this week that that was the case, that there is some kind of secret illegal referendum, is simply an attempt by the Conservative Party, it seems, to catalanise the whole process, to try to use what has happened in Catalonia and to brand Scotland's situation in a similar way, which of course is completely unfair, since Scotland has a totally different constitutional setup with the United Kingdom, where Scotland is a country in a union with a second country. Catalonia is part of Spain, unfortunately for Catalans, and they have to negotiate a secession, whereas in Scotland we merely have to negotiate the end of a treaty. Now, moving on to other stories today, it's been revealed that the pound may fall to $1.20 after Brexit. This comes from various sources in the media today. In fact, linked to this, but not from the same source, Scottish exports to the EU have surged ahead of the rest of the UK. Mrs May's Brexit deal seems to be putting the success of these exports at risk. Theresa May's bad Brexit deal must not be allowed to jeopardise Scotland's booming trade with Europe, the SNP has said. The new figures published today by HMRC show that Scotland's goods exports increased by 6% in 2018, double the growth rate of the rest of the United Kingdom. That growth rate was driven by a 14% increase in Scottish goods exports to the European Union. Scottish Government analysis has found that Theresa May's proposed Brexit deal could hit the Scottish exporters through higher costs, a loss of competitiveness or production delays. Commenting, SNP MSP Tom Arthur said, "The European Union is a market of 500 million people, 8 times the size of the UK alone. And yet the Tories want to drag us out of the world's richest single market against our will." These new figures show just how important it is, how important the EU is as a destination for Scottish exports, and underlines how damaging Theresa May's proposed Brexit deal could be. It's time to press pause on the Tories damaging Brexit and go back to the people. Okay, and this just in. This is a press release from the Scottish Parliament. And it is that the Scottish Parliament is to debate the EU settled status scheme. This is the scheme which the UK government has set up. Pardon me. This is the scheme that the UK government has set up to force EU nationals living in the UK to sign up for settled status. Okay, the Scottish Parliament has debated this today, and the SNP says Tory U-turns shows a contrasting tale of two governments. The Scottish Parliament has today debated the settled status scheme for EU citizens, praising the significant economic, social and cultural contributions made by EU citizens in communities across Scotland. SNP MSP Annabel Ewing led the debate. Nothing in the UK government's late U-turn on its plans to change the charge EU citizens, the plans to charge EU citizens a fee to apply for their right to remain in the UK, and highlighting that this plan was completely unacceptable in the first place. After lobbying from the SNP, Theresa May announced that the UK government would abolish the £65 fee EU nationals were forced to pay to retain the rights they already hold. Speaking in the debate, Ms Ewing said, "At the outset, can I just say that I find the UK government's approach to EU nationals to be abhorrent. For as a matter of principle, it is forcing individual citizens who have acquired rights further to international treaty to make the application to the UK government to seek to register in order to stay in the UK. And that is to say, the UK government is forcing them to apply for rights which they already have. These individuals, some 223,000 in Scotland, and some 3.5 million people across the UK as a whole, have been living in our country for years. And they've been contributing to the economic life of our country and the social fabric of it as well. This is a contrasting tale of two governments that will not be lost on the people of Scotland. We did not vote for this, we want no part of this, and we won't put up with this." And that ends the programme for this evening. There are one or two other small stories which we might just have time to fit in. Let me just see what we have here in the late bulletin. I'll separate these sheets of paper. Yeah, the Scottish Government has responded to Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs regional trade statistics for 2018 and the fourth quarter. The publication of the latest regional trade statistics this morning shows the importance of the EU market to Scotland. Commenting on the statistics, Trade Minister Ivan McKee said, "These are very encouraging figures. The value of Scotland's annual goods exports increased by 6% to £30.3 billion. This is a higher growth rate than the overall average of 3% in the UK and the highest percentage increase of any UK country. The figures show just how important trade with the EU is. Exports of goods to the EU are up 14% to £15.9 billion, and more specifically, exports of oil and gas to the EU are up 29% from £6.2 billion to £8 billion. While it's clear that Scotland remains open for business despite the ongoing uncertainty over Brexit, the figures also demonstrate the importance of the EU as the largest single market for Scotland's international exports. The figures also highlight the significance of the single market and the customs union, which is 8 times bigger than the EU. 8 times bigger than the UK market alone. This is particularly important given that trade with the EU makes up more than half of Scotland's exports. Well, that's it from us this evening with a rather late edition of Scotland at 7. I hope you'll join us next week, and I will be presenting the show again on Thursday evening. With that, from all the team here at Scotland at 7, good night.